All right, guys, so today I'm going to show you guys how to change out a receptacle. So I just finished refurbishing this room here, and we're going to be changing out these old dingy ivory color receptacles for these nice deco style and white with tamper proof. So some of the tools you're going to need some wire strippers. I've changed quite a few of these in this house already, so I have a spare piece of 14 gauge ground wire here. A Greenie Wire nut with the hole on the top here. I'll show you why you need that. One of these green ground screws, you may need these. They sell these in like 10 packs. I think all the way up to like 100 pack at the big box stores. Some electrical tape. You really don't need this unless you have metal outlet boxes. Voltage tester. This will help you determine if you have power. You can also use a digital multimeter. FlatHead screwdriver, Phillips screwdriver. I have some diagonal cutters, a level, Needlenose Pliers, Linesman Pliers, and I also have a Nutdriver for this particular ground screw. So your very first step, right, is to be super safe. You want to make sure there is no power on here. I had already secured the power at the breaker panel for this, and this will let you know if there is power or not. Just to verify, I can test on the extension cord here, and I have no power here. Put your smaller opening on here is your hot side, the larger blade is your neutral. So you're gonna wanna check in here. You can check both of them just to be sure. So we know the power is secure, so our next step would be to remove the old receptacle. And depending on how old the receptacle is, you're gonna run into either a FlatHead or Phillips screw on here. And you wanna be careful you don't rip the paint off like that. Sometimes it helps to just kind of stick the screwdriver underneath there and break it free. So we got the screws out, we're gonna pull this out, and we're going to see what we got in here. So it looks like we have 2 hot wires and 2 white wires on here. This outlet or receptacle is backstabbed, which is kind of a no-no. Yeah, they do manufacture these with the option to be able to stick your wires in the back. I have seen many outlets melt just because the mechanical contact that it makes with the wire is not the greatest. So I always prefer to wrap the wire around the screw. I'm gonna show you how to do that. So to speed this up, instead of trying to pull things out of here and unscrew things, snip them. Literally less than 10 seconds and it's out. All right, so just from previous experience in this house, there are ground wires. This house was wired with Romex. It was built in the 60s, so it was after they had started using Romex. But actually, this one was grounded. The receptacle was grounded. Many of the other ones in the house were not grounded, but you want to make sure you ground it. There's one extra step. If you do have a metal box, that ground that comes in from these 2 sets of wires also has to bond to this box. Now, right now, I don't know if you can see in here. Probably not if I lift these up, but you'll see there's a strain relief in here, and the strain relief is used to hold the Romex in place when they feed the box with it. And they just have this ground, well, both of the grounds on the wire coming in and the wire going out, because this feeds another receptacle on the other side of the room. They have it wrapped around the screw that holds the strain relief in, which is fine. It's technically bonded, but that's really not the proper way to do it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull that out of there. And this is a good use for the needle nose. One, it'll help you straighten this wire out. And 2, it'll help you, if I can grab it here, take that strain relief out. So we're gonna ditch that strain relief. Now, this is where this ground screw and wire comes into play. So if you have wire strippers that look like this, typically you have these holes on here. These aren't threaded, so these aren't just screw cutting holes like some wire strippers have. You can just stick this in here, and what I do is I stick a little bit through, and I bend it towards me. Now, actually, probably overbent that a little bit. So now you got this nice loop on here, right? And you want the end of that wire pointed to the right or clockwise. So when you tighten this end here actually tightens on itself. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this wire over the screw. I'm gonna pinch this to get it. And that'll help hold it on there. Then I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna bend it at a 90, just like this. And this is gonna help me hold it inside of the box and tighten it up. So these particular ground screws use a 5/16 Nutdriver. You can use a FlatHead or a Phillips on them, but I found that they're a lot easier to put in with a Nutdriver. So just move these out of the way. Kind of brace the wire here. And also putting that little 90 on there kind of gives you a little lever here so the wire doesn't spin as you tighten it up. You want to make sure you get this nice and tight. Not over tight where you're breaking things, but all right. Now we're going to take this wire and we're going to wrap it around the existing ground wires. Like this. We're going to take our Linesman Pliers. They have a nice flat wide head on here. And I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna twist this together really tight. Okay. I'm gonna take my diagonal cutters. I'm gonna cut off the excess here. And this is where that Greenie wire nut comes into play. These things are great. A huge time saver. And this is gonna secure all of these grounds together. And it's gonna leave me with a pigtail here to connect to my device, which in this case is a receptacle. This is the same thing, or same process rather, if you're changing a light switch. All right, so that's in here. I kind of just stuff it up in the back. I have plenty of ground wire here. And on this, I'm also gonna put a loop on this guy, and that'll be for our receptacle. Now, we don't have anything weird going in here or going on in here with the wiring. Sometimes you'll have like a switched outlet where maybe the top or the bottom part of the receptacle is switched by a light switch on the wall. They do that in some of the older homes that didn't have ceiling fixtures, which would be this house. So there's quite a few of those, but this is just a receptacle. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna strip these, and you wanna strip the wires for your receptacle back probably about, I would say 3/4, probably close to 1 inch. Strip that off. You want to make sure you're using the appropriate stripping portion on your wire strippers, right? So this is a 15 amp circuit, so it should be 14 gauge wire. If you use like the smaller one, like 16, you actually cut into the copper and it will weaken it. And if you bend it back and forth a couple times, it will snap off. So it's critical that you use the right setting on these strippers. And once again, we're going to strip back about 3/4, almost 1 inch. And that just gives us enough room to put these little loops on here. So typically when you put these in, your hot is on the right side. So we're going to be tightening this up this way. So I want my loops to end this way. So I'm just going to make our loops this way. And then your white or your neutral wire is going to be the opposite. First thing I do, I always connect the ground first. It's out of habit, right? You don't want to forget the grounds. I got a little extra on here I'm going to snip off. On these wire strippers, the tips on here are a little offset, and that allows you to get in here and do this. So this helps a lot, and it helps it tighten on itself. So we're going to put this guy in, going to tighten it. I suggest using a flathead on these. You can use a cabinet tip screwdriver, which is the square tip. I find that using the Phillips screwdriver on these, it tends to jump out and you can't really get it as tight as you want to, and it tends to strip the tip out in there. All right, so next, black always goes to gold. white goes to the silver. So the hot side goes to the gold or brass side here. All right, so we're gonna put that on here. And we're gonna try to squeeze this in. Oh, we got it. All right, you don't want to over tighten it, but you want it real snug. Loose connections create arcs. Arcs create heat, heat create fires. So you want to make sure that you're definitely watching what you're doing here and making these connections as good as possible. Okay. All right. Push our ground in here a little bit. Now, this isn't the greatest here because we don't have a whole lot of wire to work with. I've actually replaced some of these that the wire was cut all the way in the back here, so. All right, so we're all secure here. One last tip, electrical tape. If you're dealing with metal boxes, is it required? No, but it's good practice. So I tuck a little piece of tape under this top mounting screw and over the side. You wanna make sure you don't wrap the screw because then the receptacle will be hard to put in. Just snap off a piece here. And all this does is protect these side terminals from touching inside of here because these do have a little slotted adjuster here so you can move the receptacle in when you're mounting it. All right, you want to be careful when you're putting your wires back in. I like to make a little, kind of like a wave in the back here, kind of like this. And what that does is when you push it in, it allows the wire to almost fold on itself. All right, you don't want any sharp bends in these wires, but it's okay to have like a rounded bend. Phillips screwdriver. And what I like to do is I like to get the top one started with probably about 4 or 5 turns, and that'll keep it from popping out. And then stick it on the bottom one here, align your screw into the box, tighten that up. And I'll tighten this in almost all the way. I'll make it snug, not entirely tight, but I'll make it snug. And I'm super critical on these. I guess you could call it OCD, but I will stick a level on here and look at here. So it looks like the top needs to go over or the bottom needs to come over. So we're looking good right about there. I'm gonna hold it in place, tighten it down. Now you don't want to tighten these in too much because it'll actually pull this whole receptacle assembly in there, and then when you go to put your cover plate on, it doesn't protrude out of the surface of the cover plate really good, and it looks kind of junky. This is, for the most part, that's pretty level. And if it's not, and you're tight, you can actually just like stick a screwdriver in here gently and kind of pry over, get that in place. So I'm gonna put our cover plate on now. I like these cover plates. They're actually nylon, they're not plastic. The plastic ones that you get at the big box stores will crack if you over tighten the screws on them. So these ones are called Midway. So they're 3/8 inch larger. So if you have any imperfections around where your outlet box is in the wall, this will definitely hide it. It comes with the screws already attached to it. And all you really do is you find one of these here. And these, if you over tighten them, all they'll do is bend. The surface will bend in, they won't break like the plastic ones. That's another reason I like these. So we'll tighten this guy up. And I don't know about you guys, but I like the screws pointing up and down. And that's it. We'll turn on the power, test it, but this should be good to go now. Thanks for watching, guys.